First contact with the unthinkable. The alien diplomatic vessel descended in silence, its sleek obsidian hull reflecting the golden light of Earth's morning sun. The world's first interstellar summit was about to begin. Humanity had spent decades dreaming of this moment, proof that they were not alone in the universe. But no one could have predicted the chaos that was about to unfold. Ambassador Elias Grant adjusted his tie and took a deep breath as he stood at the edge of Earth's first interstellar spaceport. Behind him, a delegation of government officials, scientists, and military personnel stood at attention. Before him, the alien ship's ramp slowly lowered with a mechanical hiss, revealing 3 towering figures. They were nothing like humanity had imagined. Their elongated forms stood nearly 8 feet tall, their skin a shade of shimmering silver blue that shifted with the light. Each had 4 arms, 2 of which remained elegantly folded behind their backs, while the other pair moved with fluid grace. Their large, dark eyes gave no hint of their emotions as they stepped onto the platform. Their long, tapered fingers twitched slightly as if they were adjusting to the planet's atmosphere. The lead alien raised a delicate hand, a gesture of greeting. A moment later, the translator device hanging from its chest activated. "We are the Zenari," it said in a voice both soft and melodic. "We come in peace, seeking knowledge." Elias stepped forward with a warm smile. "Welcome to Earth," he said, watching carefully as their devices processed his words. "We have prepared a full tour of our civilization to share our history, culture, and advancements." The Zenari exchanged unreadable glances before the lead figure, whom Elias would later come to know as Overseer Vale, dipped his head in approval. "We look forward to understanding your species better." The tour began smoothly. The Zenari were fascinated by Earth's architecture, mesmerized by the concept of towering skyscrapers built by hand rather than organic growth or telekinetic construction. They marveled at parks, confused by the idea of humans gathering in open green spaces for leisure rather than survival. And most notably, they were utterly delighted by ice cream, their skin shifting to a warm, iridescent glow whenever they tasted new flavors. Everything seemed to be going well, until the convoy passed a large brick building with a towering fence and security cameras mounted at every corner. Vale pressed his face against the window of the diplomatic vehicle, his silver blue skin rippling with what Elias could only assume was curiosity. "What is that facility?" Vale asked. "Those smaller humans are being herded inside." Elias smiled, proud to explain. "That's a school. An institution where we educate our young to prepare them for the future." The vehicle slowed as part of the scheduled tour, giving the aliens a clear view of the school's entrance. Students in neat uniforms shuffled through metal detectors, their bags checked by security personnel. A guard stood at the gate, scanning IDs and ensuring no unauthorized individuals entered. Val's shimmering skin darkened slightly. "Those are security measures?" asked one of the other Zenari, whom Elias now identified as Scholar Talaris. His 4 fingers twitched as he tapped something onto a floating tablet. "Of course," Elias replied. "We must keep our children safe." Scholar Talaris' eyes widened. "Safe from what?" Elias hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "Oh, ensuring no one unauthorized enters, preventing them from leaving without permission, keeping order." The aliens stiffened almost simultaneously. "You restrain them?" Vale asked, his voice losing its melodic tone. Elias chuckled. "No, not at all. It's just structure, discipline. They need to be inside during school hours so they can learn effectively." The delegation exchanged glances, their colors shifting from silver blue to a pale lavender hue. "We request entry," Vale said. Elias hesitated. He hadn't planned for a school visit, but eager to maintain diplomatic goodwill, he agreed. Inside, the hallways were orderly, students walking in straight lines, moving from one classroom to another under the watchful eyes of teachers and security cameras. The aliens observed in silence, their eyes darting to the uniform rows of lockers, the regimented movements of the children, the bells signaling when they were allowed to change locations. Then they entered a classroom. 30 students sat in rigid rows, their eyes fixed on a board displaying complex mathematical formulas. The teacher, a stern woman in professional attire, stood at the front, monitoring the students as they worked in complete silence. Val's silver-blue skin faded to a sickly gray. Scholar Taller's tablet clattered to the floor. "They are confined," Val whispered. Elias, oblivious to their horror, continued his explanation. "Well, yes. They must remain seated to focus. It's how they learn." Taller's fingers curled as he pointed to a student who hesitantly raised his hand. "That young one, why does he require permission to perform a biological function?" Elias followed his gaze. The boy had asked to use the restroom. The teacher checked the clock before nodding her approval. "That's just to maintain order," Elias said. "We can't have children wandering the halls whenever they want." Vale turned sharply to him. "How long do you confine them daily?" Elias faltered under the alien's intense gaze. "About 7 hours." Tallerus gasped. 7 hours, 5 days a week. Elias nodded. Some countries even keep them longer. Tallerus took a step back. "This is systemic imprisonment." Elias frowned. "No, you misunderstand. It's education." Scholar Tallerus shook his head violently. "You are telling us that your species systematically confines its young during their most crucial developmental period." Val's skin turned deep purple. What Elias was beginning to realize was a sign of anger. "This is unthinkable," Val said. "We assumed your species valued its young." "We do," Elias insisted, suddenly realizing this was turning into something far worse than a simple misunderstanding. The school bell rang, making the aliens flinch. Students moved between classrooms in disciplined lines, their conversations brief, their steps rehearsed. Vale turned to his fellow delegates. "We must contact the Galactic Council immediately." Panic surged through Elias. "Wait. What? This isn't a crisis." "This is more than a crisis," Vale said, his voice shaking. "This is a violation of basic sentient rights." Elias tried desperately to explain, but the damage was done. The Zenari hurried back to their diplomatic vehicle, broadcasting urgent messages to their homeworld. The galaxy reacts. A crisis unfolds. The emergency transmission spread across the galactic network faster than any human news outlet could keep up. Within hours, the broadcast had reached thousands of alien worlds, each one responding with varying degrees of shock, horror, and outrage. The message was simple. The humans imprison their young in containment facilities for hours each day, restricting movement, monitoring their every action, and forcing them into rigid systems of control. Immediate intervention is required. On Earth, Ambassador Elias Grant had barely begun damage control before the situation spiraled further out of hand. His superiors bombarded him with frantic messages, demanding explanations, damage assessments, and solutions. "You let them walk into a school." The Secretary of Interstellar Affairs, a man who usually prided himself on keeping his composure, was practically shouting over the encrypted communication line. Elias pinched the bridge of his nose. "I didn't know they'd see it this way. Schools are a normal part of human life." "Normal to us," the secretary snapped. "To them, it looks like forced confinement." Elias glanced at the monitor beside him, where various galactic news outlets played endless loops of the school footage. In one video, a Zenari journalist narrated in a horrified whisper as human children sat in their classrooms, stiff and silent under the watchful eyes of their instructors. Another showed security footage of a standardized test room. The students hunched over their papers, a proctor pacing between them like a prison warden. The headline on one of the broadcasts sent a chill down his spine. "Breaking. Evidence of widespread psychological conditioning of human youth." Elias turned back to the secretary. "What do they want us to do? Shut down all schools overnight? Let kids just run wild in the streets?" "For now, we need to calm them down," the secretary replied. The Galactic Council has summoned us to an emergency hearing. You'll be testifying before them in less than 24 hours. Elias exhaled sharply. Fantastic. The Galactic Council convenes. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive circular auditorium floating in orbit above a neutral planet, its walls pulsing with the soft glow of embedded bioorganic lights. Representatives from over 300 intelligent species gathered, their seats arranged in a spiraling formation that centered around the humans standing at the lowest point. Elias stood flanked by two other representatives, Dr. Evelyn Marsh, an expert in education, and General Richard Harlow, who had been sent for diplomatic stability, but looked entirely out of place in a setting meant for dialogue rather than military strategy. At the highest seat of the council, a crystalline being named Speaker Ulzari addressed the chamber. Their multifaceted body shimmered with deep reds, a sign of distress. Ambassador Grant, the accusations against your species are severe, Ulzari said, their voice resonating through the chamber like the chime of a distant bell. The evidence provided by the Zanari delegation suggests that human children are subjected to enforced containment, deprivation of movement, psychological conditioning, and excessive stress levels under the guise of education. How do you respond? Elias stepped forward, forcing himself to appear calm. With all due respect, Speaker Ulzari, I believe this is a massive misunderstanding. What you call containment is, in reality, a structured learning environment. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. A representative from the aquatic world of Keltor spoke up, their gelatinous form shifting in agitation. You force younglings into rigid structures rather than letting them learn freely. Do you not trust their natural intelligence? We do, Elias insisted, but structure helps them develop discipline, teamwork, and responsibility. Another voice interrupted, this time from a reptilian species known as the Threxan. Your own data betrays you, Ambassador. Stress levels among human youth are among the highest of any known sentient species. Depression, anxiety, even reports of young humans engaging in self-harm. Can you deny this? Elias hesitated for half a second. Long enough. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Barbaric. Unacceptable. We must intervene. Dr. Marsh finally stepped forward. Please, allow me to explain. Our educational system is designed to prepare children for the complexities of adult life. If we were to simply let them run free without guidance, they wouldn't develop the skills needed to survive in our society. A representative from a gaseous life form floated forward, its voice a whispering wind. Survival. You make it sound as if they are being trained for war. General Harlow, silent until now, finally spoke up. Not war. Preparedness. Every civilization has challenges. Humans face economic, technological, and social complexities. Education provides the tools they need to navigate them. Vale, the Zanari overseer who had originally raised the alarm, stepped forward. Your young spend the most crucial years of their development under conditions that would be illegal in most advanced societies. Elias sighed. And what would you propose we do instead? The chamber fell silent. Finally, Speaker Ulzari leaned forward, their crystalline body glinting. We propose a full investigation into your educational systems. If reforms are not made, the Galactic Council may be forced to impose sanctions. Elias felt his stomach drop. Sanctions. Ulzari's voice remained unwavering. We cannot, in good conscience, allow a member species to continue harmful practices against its own young. Reform your system, or face consequences. The hearing concluded, leaving the human delegation stunned. As Elias and his team left the chamber, Dr. Marsh muttered, "What the hell just happened?" Elias rubbed his temples. We just got told by the entire galaxy that our schools are prisons, and if we don't change them, humanity is going to be cut off from interstellar trade, alliances, and scientific exchange. General Harlow exhaled through his nose. So what's the plan? Elias glanced back toward the council chamber, where alien representatives still murmured amongst themselves. "We've got 1 year to figure out how to fix human education before the galaxy decides we're unfit to raise our own children." The challenge was set, and the fate of humanity's future now rested on proving that their schools weren't just places of control, but of learning, growth, and hope. The firestorm across the stars. The news of humanity's so-called containment of its young spread like wildfire across the interstellar community. In a matter of days, debates erupted in alien governments, civil rights organizations, and even on fringe worlds where human presence had only just begun to take root. The phrase, "save the human children," became a rallying cry across multiple species, plastered across galactic news broadcasts, painted on banners at protests, and even used as a battle slogan by radical anti-human factions who had long viewed Earth as a primitive, warlike society. For the first time in history, humanity found itself at the center of an intergalactic humanitarian crisis. Except this time, it wasn't about famine, war, or disease. It was about schools. Panic at the highest levels. Inside the United Nations Interstellar Affairs Headquarters in Geneva, Earth's top diplomats, politicians, and scientists had gathered in a crisis meeting that could determine the future of human-alien relations. The air was thick with tension as holographic reports flooded the massive conference table, each displaying some new horror. Protests on Zenari Prime, where alien citizens marched with glowing banners demanding action against Earth's prison-like education system. Boycotts by major intergalactic corporations, pulling out of human trade agreements under pressure from civil rights groups. A proposed resolution by the Galactic Council demanding that Earth abolish mandatory schooling within 1 standard year or face severe economic and diplomatic sanctions. "This is spiraling out of control," Secretary of Interstellar Affairs Evelyn Drake muttered, rubbing her temples. "They're treating this like we're running child labor camps." Across from her, Ambassador Elias Grant stared at the latest footage. Zenari activists attempting to liberate a group of human exchange students on an alien world, only for the students to protest their own rescue, angrily demanding to be taken back to their university. The aliens were baffled. The humans were furious. The entire situation had become an unmitigated disaster. Dr. Evelyn Marsh, Earth's foremost expert on education, leaned forward. "We're approaching this the wrong way. The problem isn't just that they misunderstand our system. It's that they fundamentally cannot comprehend it." General Richard Harlow scoffed. "What's so hard to comprehend? We make kids go to school so they can get jobs. That's how civilizations function." Dr. Marsh shook her head. "For us, yes, but most of the galaxy doesn't function that way." She gestured toward the holographic display. "Look at the other species we've encountered. The Zenari don't have schools. They download knowledge into their young through memory transfer. The Keltor absorb social behaviors through chemical signals in the water. The Threxan learn by instinct, genetically inheriting knowledge from their ancestors." Elias sighed. "So they look at our schools and see cages, because to them, forcing someone to sit and listen for hours a day is unnatural." "Exactly," Marsh said. "They don't see structure. They see captivity." A grim silence fell over the room. Finally, Secretary Drake exhaled. "Then we have to prove to them that our way works. That it doesn't just create workers, it creates thinkers, dreamers, leaders." "And how the hell do we do that?" General Harlow grunted. Dr. Marsh leaned forward, her expression determined. "We show them. The experiment begins." It took weeks of negotiation, but in the end, the Galactic Council approved Earth's desperate proposal. A full-scale education experiment where alien and human students would study together, experiencing both human and alien learning methods firsthand. The project was officially dubbed the Interstellar Learning Exchange, but in casual conversation, most simply called it the Education Trials. The idea was simple. If Earth's system truly was as cruel as the Zenari claimed, then surely any intelligent being subjected to it would suffer. But if it worked, if human students thrived, adapted, and even outperformed their alien peers, then perhaps, just perhaps, humanity's method wasn't as flawed as it seemed. Of course, the problem was finding volunteers. Most human parents were horrified at the idea of their children being subjected to alien educational systems, floating in light-based learning pods, absorbing knowledge through genetic osmosis, or spending entire days in telepathic dreamscapes where reality itself bent around the mind's perception of learning. Likewise, most alien parents were equally horrified at the idea of their children being placed in a structured, time-regulated, exam-based environment where they would be trapped in rigid classrooms for hours at a time. Eventually, after considerable debate, the Council and Earth's governments reached an agreement. A single experimental school would be established, a hybrid between human and alien learning structures, a place where both species could observe and adapt to each other's educational philosophies, a place where structure and freedom would collide. The location: New Horizons Academy, a newly built, state-of-the-art institution located on a neutral world just outside human space. The challenge: proving to the entire galaxy that Earth's educational system wasn't a nightmare, but a gateway to something greater. The new students arrive. The first day at New Horizons Academy was unlike anything humanity, or the galaxy, had ever seen. A massive facility, the school had been designed to incorporate elements from multiple species' learning methods. Half the classrooms resembled traditional Earth schools: desks, teachers, whiteboards, and textbooks. The other half looked like something out of a dream: floating learning pods, holographic reality chambers, and crystalline growth networks that allowed students to literally grow new knowledge. The student body was a mix of hand-picked human and alien students, each one representing their species' best and brightest. Some came with open minds, eager to experience something new. Others came ready to prove the other side wrong. From the very start, conflict erupted. Human students struggled in Zenari light learning pods, unable to absorb knowledge through color shifts alone. Zenari students panicked when asked to sit at a desk and complete written assignments, struggling with the concept of prolonged focus. Keltor students, who learned through communal song and movement, were horrified by silent individual study periods. Threxan students, who learned primarily through instinct and personal experience, were frustrated by the human need for structured lessons and explanations. For weeks, it seemed as if the experiment was destined to fail. Until, one day, something remarkable happened. The first breakthrough. It started with a single student, a human girl named Leah Kwan, struggling to learn through the Zenari light pods, had spent weeks frustrated, until she accidentally closed her eyes. To everyone's shock, the moment she stopped trying to focus, her brain naturally began to absorb the light patterns in a way no human had before. Within minutes, she was fluently processing Zenari knowledge at the same rate as their own young. It was the first true fusion of learning styles. From there, other breakthroughs followed. A Zenari student, Lauren, who had struggled with human-style written tests, found success by combining Zenari memory absorption techniques with physical note-taking. A Threxan student, Brock, learned human mathematics faster than any human in his class, simply by allowing himself to experience frustration, an emotion his species had never associated with learning before. A Keltor student, Maisha, discovered she could master human languages by combining communal singing with spoken words, creating an entirely new way to process information. Slowly, a new educational system began to emerge. Not human, not alien, but something entirely new. A system where structure and freedom coexisted, where discipline didn't mean control, but guidance, where learning wasn't about confinement, but discovery. And as the first semester at New Horizons Academy unfolded, the galaxy watched in awe. Because for the first time in history, humans weren't just defending their system. They were redefining education itself.